Welcome to the All Ambient podcast, where we dig into the creative process, hear untold stories, and explore the brilliant minds behind some of the finest ambient music out there. I'm your host, Mike Graff. I'm excited to be in this together with you. Let's get going. Again, welcome to the All Ambient podcast, everyone. My name is Mike Graff. I make music as Dear Gravity. It is incredible that we get to do this thing together. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. So very, very grateful. I cannot wait for you to get the chance to hear my conversation with Niclas Lundqvist today. Before we dig into that conversation, I want to say a huge thank you to All Ambient. That's all-ambient.com. What an incredible music licensing site for all things ambient and cinematic music. If you are a creator and you are tired of digging through catalogs that have a bunch of music that might not be the best fit for your project, for any project, All Ambient is absolutely the perfect licensing site for you. Every song that's on All Ambient has been expertly curated. There is nothing on the site that doesn't feel great. And even better is that there are curated song bundles that are all designed around an individual theme or feel that can fit your film, video, your project perfectly. It's absolutely a great solution to your music licensing needs. Go check it out at all-ambient.com. That's all-ambient.com. And if you use the promo code podcast25, you will save 25% on your order. That is a huge savings on an already great deal for some incredible music. And fun fact, when you license your music on a site like All Ambient, you can know that you are directly supporting the artists and allowing them to continue to make more and more music in the way that they do, so that you can continue to make great projects in the very way that you do. What a cool thing. Go check it out at all-ambient.com. Today, my guest is the talented Niclas Lundqvist. Niclas is a man of many talents who has been not just within the music circles, but through entrepreneurial business circles over the course of his career, recently digging deep into the music world, not only releasing stuff for streaming and licensing, but also putting a lot of music to film, working with different gaming platforms. He has just a breadth of knowledge and also just a wonderful heart for creativity and for encouragement. This was a really fun one. I know that you are not going to want to miss this. Let's dig right into my conversation with Niclas Lundqvist. Folks, today I have the pleasure of welcoming none other than Niclas Lundqvist to the All Ambient podcast. This has been a long time coming. I'm really glad that we are finally here. Niclas, welcome to the All Ambient podcast, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I could not be happier that we're doing this. You and I had the chance to connect a little while ago and immediately just hit it off. I was so impressed, probably isn't the right word, but just so put at ease, not only by, of course, your wisdom and your talent and all that in the space, but also just your personality. And I love your passion for what you do. And when this one came up on the calendar, I was like, oh, this is going to be a good day. Looking forward to this. So yeah, thanks for setting aside time.
I'm blushing. Likewise. Mutual admiration.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yep. Well, hey, we've got plenty of stuff to dig into. I can't wait to get there, but why don't we start in kind of the same place that we start most of the one-on-one interviews? I would love to hear a little bit about your journey into music, how you got started. Was there something kind of early on, whatever stage in the game, you have this memory of something musical, just being wowed by it, or just being mentally aware that you're like, wow, I think music is going to be something that I'm going to be engaging with for a really long time. This is going to be a big part of my life. Tell me a little bit about your story of how you got into it all.
Yeah, well, it's a really good question. And I've been a frequent listener to the podcast. And what struck me is that the common denominator is most creators in this space or in other musical spaces have been introduced to music at a very early age. Mm-hmm. And my story is no different. I remember, I come from a very musical family. My father played the guitar, and for as long as I can remember, there was always music played in our house.
Yeah.
I was upstairs and my dad was downstairs playing vinyls with Roxy Music, the Beatles, Fleetwood Mac, you name it. There was always music running in the background.
Yeah.
When I was around 6 or 7, they decided to put me in piano classes.
All right. Yep.
So I started to learn the piano at the conservatory in Lucerne in Switzerland. I actually grew up in Switzerland, but I'm Swedish, where I got my sort of, like classical schooling, music theory, just understanding classical music and learning how to play the piano. And I did that for quite a lot of years.
Yeah.
Up until I was, some years into the teens, when other stuff became more important, like, girls and football and friends and all that stuff. And it wasn't
Life is expanding,
it wasn't so hip to play the piano anymore.
Sure.
But music always stayed with me. And in the late teens, I got exposed to electronic music, techno music back then. And I got instantly hooked because for me, there were so many similarities in how electronic music was written and produced, and with the classical music. You had these small repetitive patterns and arpeggios that combined took you on an emotional journey. So I completely understood that music and that just stuck with me.
Absolutely, yeah.
And after a few years in my 20s, I had the opportunity to join a pop music production team here in Stockholm.
Love it, yeah.
And started working with and that's how when I started to learn Logic. And we had some really pretty good success working with big artists here, sold platinum in the Nordics. But after a short period of time, the whole file sharing Napster thing became an issue. So the entire industry was in a turmoil, plus the dynamic within that team was sort of dysfunctional. So it just felt too volatile to stay in the industry. So I kind of quit music in that sense and went into business. So I've been self-employed pretty much all my life, started businesses in different areas. But I've kept producing and writing music just for myself throughout these years. But then fast forward, Corona hit.
Right.
And I was actually doing consultancy work for an insurtech company here in Stockholm.
Yeah.
And they canceled my contract immediately, which is sort of the name of the game when you're a consultant.
Correct.
So, and I realized, okay, this is going to take some time. No one's going to hire anyone. I didn't have any good ideas for new business. Yeah. So I've always had a fascination for cinematic music. Like how the music creates emotions. How do you connect the visuals with music to create an emotion?
Absolutely.
So I just decided to write some cinematic scores when I was, had all this time and bumped into a person this is very seasoned and well-known producer here that works with like super artists all over the world that listened to the scores and said, hey, why don't we do this together? So we started doing that. And that has grown for me into a pretty good business. I do scored several pilots now for some big streaming services. I do advertising, game music creation, which is a huge thing for me right now. And then I also have mentoring programs for, private. If you're a, intermediate producer and you want to take your skills to the next level, then we can set up a course tailored for you. Yeah. And then about 10 months ago, for some reason, I just decided to write something that I thought was ambient.
Yeah.
And got connected to a label in the industry. And I had my first label release 10 months ago, roughly.
Which, if one did not see the timestamps on your releases, but they looked at the size of your catalog, they'd be like, whoa, this guy's been doing his thing for quite a while. And well, in the truth, I mean, you've been making music for a long time, but the amount of material that you have managed to successfully release in the past, like you just said, 10 months is just flabbergasting, Niclas. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just like it is so great you hit the gas pedal all the way down and said, here we go. Let's go. And I love it. I love everything. I mean, your whole catalog.
Maybe that's something for the listeners to understand also, that I have ADHD, which gives me an enormous drive. I have high amount of energy and creativity. So in the past, what has been a challenge, obviously, is structure and things like that, the normal stuff. Yeah. But when I got my diagnosis just a few years ago, actually, and started taking a pill in the morning, my life pretty much changed. finished. So if you, a good comparison is like looking back 10 years when I didn't do music professionally. If I would have had devoted X amount of time to writing music, I would have had, let's say, 20 theories on my computer. Now, if I devote the same time, I have 20 finished productions. So that's pretty much what the diagnosis has given me.
Right.
Just the focus to finish stuff and the structure also. And then I think also I have found a workflow that is super efficient. And I've taught that to a few people. Right. That allows me just to write tons of music.
Absolutely. Do you have just a couple of your efficiency tips or the way that you have your work set up so that you can do it efficiently? Are there some, without putting the cart before the horse, you got any tips for people who might be curious on how to sharpen up their workflow?
Yes, I do. I think, there are a few things that are really important. First off, how you have set things up. I'm a big fan of templates. So if you're constantly interrupted in your creative flow to do mechanical things that you do in every single project, then that's a failure. So having a good template allows you to actually stay in the zone and to focus on the creative thing, which is the writing. The second thing is, now I know people who do it really well, but I'm not a fan of starting a track by arranging when you find a new sound or a new track. A lot of people start arranging. The problem with that is if you've produced several tracks and it sounds great, but something is missing, then it's like a Tetris thing. You need to find something that fits into a very, very specific soundscape or a very specific progression or very specific rhythm. And that is quite hard. If you do that from start, so what I usually do is I have a very looped sections and then I fill it up with a lot of tracks that all work together. A good analogy is what you're doing is you're painting a picture and the score window is your canvas. And the tracks are your colors. So you want to give yourself the opportunity to paint with as many colors as possible. That doesn't mean you have to use all of the colors, but you just want to give yourself the option. Once you have filled up with X amount of tracks that all sound good together, then you can start arranging and just, put them out. And the arrangement, it takes me like 5 minutes to arrange a track once I've done that.
Boss level status right there. My goodness. Oh man. I love that though. I mean, for you to have developed it in a way where you know exactly what you want to be able to do. I mean, and you're making those decisions where you're not waffling on something for hours on end or anything like that. That's a really beautiful thing. And if I'm hearing you correctly, it seems as though some of the ways where as artists, how we can get in our own heads and how like when you start second guessing or when you start looking at the project, the entire project and all the different things you have to do at once instead of just, little bit by bit, like you said, separating out the arranging from, just the actual like just getting the ideas into place. It's really easy to get lost in the enormity of it all, or perhaps all the different asks that are made upon you as an artist. And so for you to like mince it down to piece by piece in a way that, works for a lot of people, but you've kind of specifically honed them for yourself. Clearly, your work speaks for itself, and this is affording you wonderful results. I don't just want to say prolific in number, but like the stuff that you're putting out does sound amazing. And I've been listening to it all day, and there has not been a single skipped song in the bunch. I've just enjoyed the whole ride all the way through, and it's been really great. So good for you, man. That's
lovely
awesome
to hear. Thank you. No, you're touching a very valid point. I think, the whole second guessing thing, especially if you're not a seasoned producer, if you're, somewhat of a rookie. And I consider myself an ambient rookie still because I haven't been doing it for a long time. So I'm also second guessing myself. But I've also realized that you're making music for yourself and potentially for an audience. What I see many times is that people are second guessing themselves based on what other creators might think. And that is something that is fundamentally wrong, because they are often geeks that are, the mix here is slightly off or that is slightly off, but that's a personal flavor. That's a personal preference, and you're not making music for them. If you're making music that resonates with you and that hits the nerve in terms of an emotion or a feeling, then you're doing it right. And so don't overproduce your tracks. I don't spend a lot of time on my tracks. And okay, I know the mix could have been a little bit better here, or this could have been slightly better. But the end result is still good enough. And at the end of the day, and people will probably hate me for saying this, but I think that music is a numbers game like everything else. I'm not Simon Cowell, I'm not Clive Davis, so I have no idea of what tracks are going to fly. So if you put out X amount of tracks, chances are that maybe one of the 20 or two of the 20 will fly for whatever reason. And I have no control of that. I don't know which tracks they are. And I've seen it so many times where I do something, doesn't necessarily have to be in this space, but I do a track that I think, oh, this is the best track that I've done in this space ever. And then I release it and nothing happens. And then I release another track, which I'm happy about, that, it's a good track, but it's not the best work that I've done. And that track flies for some reason. And I have no idea why. So that proves to me that music is a numbers game. So if you want to sort of generate revenue further down the road, you need to consistently release music, at a decent level. And that's my strategy going forward. And like you said, I've went from 0 to 2 million monthly streams now, I think, within 10 months. And that is sort of proving my point.
Absolutely. And I think we've talked about it on the podcast before, but James Clear, the author, he's got a whole thing on the equal odds principle. And that idea of it is not our job as artists, as creators to, like you said, to know which ones are going to be the ones that take off and go that way. It is our job to be obedient to the craft and to trust the process that the ones that are supposed to rise to the top are going to rise to the top. I don't need to figure that out. I just need to keep doing what I am called to do. So,
I don't think we can figure it out. I don't have that,
oh man.
I don't have that skill set in my DNA. I'm not Clive Davis or Simon Cowell or whoever it is that has this, magical understanding of what is going to fly. I don't have it. So I have to rely on the numbers.
Hey, you're in good company for that by all means. That's awesome. Okay, this is probably a little selfish because I am personally interested in more of the scoring to picture and certainly game music work. I've always, not that I've even done mass levels of it before, but I have appreciated how music interacts with gaming for decades now. It really, and especially in, this will show my age a little bit, but right around, the end of my teen years, into my early 20s is when the consoles were making a shift into the ability to not have any sort of chip limitation on what the music was going to be. It could be whatever anyone wanted it to be at that point, which is beautiful. And consequently, there's been incredible musical work poured into so many of these AAA games and even down to the smaller ones. And I've had the chance to work on some Apple Arcade stuff, things like that at different degrees of involvement. But man, I would love to hear a little bit more, Niclas, about that journey for you, and maybe not even specifically how you write for a game or write to film, but more so how that fits into the overall work you do, which things feed your soul in different ways. When you start going on a game, is that the sort of thing where you have to set everything else aside because you want to buckle down on that one? Or do you kind of dance with a few projects at the same time, spin a couple different plates at the same time? Tell me about that whole journey and what that looks like.
To address the last question, I do juggle several projects at the same time, which is sort of part of my diagnosis, I guess. But
it keeps you going though. So
it does. And the good thing with working a lot with this client in the UK, it's a big production studio, and they do everything from casino games, quizzes, and a lot of different things. The good thing with that is that it gives me an enormous variety of things to produce. So one week I'm producing a rock track, and then I'm doing a psychedelic reggae tunes and sound design for that. And the week after that, I'm doing voodoo music because there's a voodoo themed game coming out. And so for me, which fits my personality perfectly, it never gets boring. If I was to do, I love ambient music, I love cinematic music, but if I was to do the same thing from morning to evening every day, I would give up in the end because it would become boring. Just doing all of these different things is very stimulating.
Yeah.
Plus, and this is actually something that I tell a lot of people, that ask me, what can I do to increase my production skill? Go out of your comfort zone and produce something that you would never have considered writing or producing.
Yeah.
I'm forced with these gigs to actually write and produce music that I, normally wouldn't do. So I need to understand, how is that music created? How is it structured? How is it mixed? How do the instruments play together? You become a much better producer and writer if you go out of your comfort zone and explore all of these different genres.
Yeah.
So that has been a good thing. But when it comes to creating the music, I could say if you're scoring for a client, I think the biggest challenge is to actually understand and decode what the client means. When they give you reference tracks or they give you a brief, they say something, but what do they actually mean?
Right. Yep.
So there is always a learning. If you start working with a new client, there's always a learning curve involved.
Yeah.
Where you get to know one another. Now, with the people that I work from the UK, when they say something, I understand exactly what they mean.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, you're fumbling in the dark and you're sending over something. No, this was not at all what we meant. But after a little while, you get to understand what they mean.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges doing this kind of music.
Being able to speak the same language and being, like you said,
just decoding your client and an understanding, they say something to me, because they are not musically trained.
Yep.
They don't know music theory like you do. So if they say something, they put their words on it. And it's your job to decode that and understand, what does that mean for me as a creator?
And I'm even thinking about it vice versa, where I could, if someone didn't understand, or they're like, oh no, that's not what I meant at all. Instead of me getting all frustrated, like, man, I'm this misunderstood artist, and maybe it's more like, well, I don't know, should I be listening to you a little bit? Like, I may be the one who excels artistically. You might be the one who has a degree in like marketing and communication, and I'm the one who's not holding up my end of the bargain of actually like holding a good conversation between the two of us. And so those are good chances for us to learn, not just sharpen kind of what you were saying, where you're doing all these different genres and exploring how the mix comes together, what instruments and how the melodies interact and all that, but also just us growing as good human beings, right? Like getting to listen.
If you're a creator that wants client work, if you have prestige and you're an easily offended person because someone criticizes what you've done, you're going to go bankrupt within a few days. I can promise you that. So for me, and this might sound strange, but I don't fall in love with my own productions.
Sure.
I never do. It doesn't matter if it's a client gig or if it's my own music. I really enjoy what I do and I'm proud of it, but I don't fall in love with it. For the simple reason that everything can always change. There's never more than one way forward. And a lot of times when I have thought, okay, I nailed this one, and then, I get a request for a small change somewhere, which I just instinctively don't agree with, but then I try it and it actually works out really well and it sounds better. So you need to keep an open mind, which goes hand in hand with the fact that you're constantly work in progress. If you're creating music, you're never fully taught. If you feel that, you should quit making music, in my opinion. Because I learn new things every single day, from collaborating with people, from exploring new genres, or talking to people in the industry. You're a work in progress, period.
Niclas, I am signing up for your masterclass, my man. This is just gold. Thank you for speaking into so many of our listeners' lives and mindsets. And this is just so valuable. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears just for a second. I would love to hear a little bit more about the release, Niclas, that you have coming out on Echoes Blue. At time of recording this interview, it isn't out yet. My guess is that by the time that the episode releases, it will have just come out. I can't wait to hear a little bit more from you about your Emotions EP coming out on Echoes Blue. Tell me more.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I connected with Ben quite early in my ambient career.
Yep.
And, being the old school guy that I am, I really like to jump on Zoom calls to get start a personal relationship, and the whole
Absolutely.
networking thing. It's always an important thing. And Ben is just is such a super nice guy.
He's the
so
best.
I've had the pleasure of working with him in different things over these past months. And I've always looked at Echoes Blue because, the artists that release on Echoes Blue, for me, when I ventured into this space, it's, the titans, in my opinion.
Oh, man.
Yourself, and then Marshall, and also Kirk. I actually bought his masterclass a few weeks ago.
Oh, on Studio? Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
That's great.
I'm preaching about being work in progress.
Yeah. Hey, we're all learning from each other. Yep.
I was really curious how he was creating his atmosphere. So, we do a lot of things quite similar, but I also picked up a lot of other stuff, which was really helpful. So can highly recommend if anyone out there considers buying it. It was great.
Yeah.
Anyway, connected with Ben, and then I've always looked at this it's a boutique label with really, really high quality. And also it allows me to be a little bit more cinematic, maybe, than releasing elsewhere, which comes quite naturally for me, incorporating classical instruments more, and just the storytelling can be more dramatic and more rhythmic in a sense.
Yeah.
So it was, when I started out, it was a dream to release on Echoes Blue, and now I have my first release coming out, Emotions, and I have 2 more releases in the pipeline already.
Awesome.
Super excited about that. And
let's go.
Now I don't know when this podcast is being aired, but I have a single coming out first that is called Untold, with a rework from Marshall, Be Still the Earth.
Yep.
Lovely rework. Super happy he devoted his time to that. And then have another single coming out 2 weeks after that. And the week after, the second single, the full EP, the 4-track EP will be released.
Amazing. Can't wait to dig in. It's going to be great.
Yeah, thank you. Like the title suggests, it's been 2023 was quite an emotional year for me. Ups and downs, private, personal life. And the whole EP is sort of a reflection of those ups and downs that I experienced. That's why it's called Emotions.
Oh, well, I can't wait to
without
take it
going into much detail.
Of course, but indeed. And don't get me wrong, you stay as shallow or go as deep as you want to, but also the ability for you to translate your personal set of emotions and what's been going on in you in response to those private personal things, to then put that to music. I have no doubt that it's going to offer others that very same opportunity to process what they're going through. And that's I
really hope so, because releasing music that is based on personal emotions and experience is quite exposing. So for me, I really hope, fingers crossed, that it will go down well. Let's see.
Well, thanks for daring, and thanks for being willing to expose yourself. You know what I mean? To be able to put it out there, it's a step of bravery, and it doesn't mean it's any less nerve-wracking.
Thank you.
But it didn't stop you from doing it, so I'm grateful for that. That's a big deal. Yeah, I love it. Man, we could go for a long time, Niclas. I love your heart. I love your approach, all the stuff. I do, before we officially wrap it, we do need to spend some time in the all ambient lightning round. Are you ready for the all ambient lightning round?
Yeah. I think so.
With a slight sense of fear and trepidation, but we're good. We should be good. Otherwise, I'll make it painless. It doesn't have to be a short answer, but please, just whatever comes off the top of your head is always a fun answer. So let's do it. What are you, Niclas, currently geeking out about right now? Is there a piece of gear or an instrument or an album or something outside of the music world that you are geeking out about right now?
I would say that I'm geeking out about stats on the streaming services. I've spent a lot of time, which is sort of unsexy in a sense, but coming from the business side of things, also stating that music is a numbers game, I'm trying to analyze a lot of the data that I get on a daily basis. So I spend a lot of time trying to figure out, where does the growth come from, which playlists are performing, why are they performing, which tracks are performing, and why are they performing, and so on. With the number of releases that I have had now, I'm starting to get more and more reliable data. Also see where, the followers that I get on Spotify, for example, are there specific, do they come from specific labels or playlists or, and there are quite a lot of differences, which are, I think, for me, since I do this professionally, are important to understand. Otherwise, you're fumbling in the dark and it seems a bit unprofessional. So I'm geeking out on the numbers a lot.
Oh, that's really good. Really, that is good. I think there's some who perhaps ignore them with maybe the story that they're telling themselves, and that is, it's just going to distract me from making better music or better art. And perhaps to a degree that might be true, but I don't think it's a healthy thing to be completely unaware of what's happening, or to at least kind of what you said, like understand them to a degree of, okay, what's happening over here and why is it doing that? And how does that inform whatever decisions I make? So I appreciate your approach in that, because I think it could be sort of a pitfall for a lot of creative people to see that and be like, oh, that's not for me. I'm better than that. I'm just going to go make music. Cool. But also, like, let's maybe look at the things that would allow you to keep making music and to do it in a way that's viable for years on end, for decades. Like, I'm not in it for the short game. I'm in it to sustain this for a really long time. And so if there are things that can help me understand how to perhaps better do that, not pander to what the stats tell me, but allow them to inform what decisions are being made, I think that's a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're basing your music 100% on numbers and statistics, I agree. That's a big, big fail.
Yeah.
That's not the way going forward. But we have to remember that in the ambient space, it's not very community driven. So this is functional mood music in a sense.
Sure.
Which is consumed often in the background. So the numbers are quite relevant. What makes people stay on tracks longer than others, and how do you create emotions or moods for specific playlists? How do they perform? Is it worth investing my time into that specific subgenre within the ambient space? Or would I be better off actually writing something else? Because for me, it doesn't really matter. If I'm writing it for a specific purpose. Sometimes I write music for no purpose whatsoever. I can go crazy and create this like super hard industrial techno track, which is just for me. I might go ahead and release it, but within this space, I made a decision that I want to have a professional approach, and I want to generate revenue and be successful in that sense, also from a financial perspective. So the numbers are relevant. If you're releasing other music that is very community driven, you can build a fan base and so on, and you can do concerts or whatever it is. There are other factors to consider, but within this functional mood music space, the numbers are what I think are quite important.
I'm with you. And that's a great balanced way of approaching it. Thanks for modeling that well for all of us, man. It's good.
Thanks. Good.
All right. Next lightning round question. Niclas, what is one weird thing about you that most people do not know?
I've been the Swedish poker champion.
What? For real?
Yes.
Nice, man. We should get a virtual poker game going in the ambient community. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I don't even know how that would work. I just want to do it.
I actually played a lot back in the days, and I've played the World Series in Vegas several times, and
holy cow,
played professionally for a while.
Nice.
And, that was before I had kids, and then the whole didn't really work out. So
understood.
And I also got bored. It was just too monotone.
Okay. Understandable.
Yeah, but Swedish champion in Omaha, which it's not Texas Hold'em, which is quite similar.
Yeah.
So I have a few trophies back home here. So that's a weird fact.
That's great. Oh, I should say this with a grain of salt. I think the game of poker is fascinating. I play it very rarely. And I think the only time I've ever even played with any type of like monetary odds is like, you know, like $5 antes in with buddies just to make it like kind of interesting. But, what I
playing poker with your buddies is a very social way to spend your time.
It is.
As long as no one is risking their livelihood, it's really, really fun. It's super social. Because you're challenging your friends, you're laughing, you're having a good time, and there's sort of a spice where, you know, you get a little bit of nerve.
Right.
We've had a lot of like private poker games with friends with very, very low amounts at stake.
Yeah.
It's just super fun.
Well, I love that. I'm just fascinated by the mindset of it all and how it seems to be. Well, I mean, we could go off on this. Is probably another whole episode, right?
Yeah, it is.
But
it's psychology. Poker is psychology.
Yep. I was gonna say like there is some of like the math that goes into it and the odds and the probability and like all that. But man, the psychology part of it is just wild to me. It is so crazy how to be able to read other people and to be able to hold yourself in a way that then sends signals to other people that would steer them in a direction that you perhaps would want them to go in order for your hand to best theirs and or you know stack the odds in your favor. And what a ride. That's crazy. So much fun. In the presence of a champion. That's awesome.
Oh no, it was a long time ago, to be fair.
Oh, that's great. Well, I mean I've always known with you that I was in the presence of a champion, but now it's in multiple fields. Your goodness gracious. I love it. Yeah. That's so great.
Thank you.
Well, man, when I come over to Sweden to say hello, we got to get a low key game going around the table. That'd be fun.
Yeah, game on. I'm ready for it.
I'm going to get schooled. I'm ready for it, but game on. Let's do it.
I'm quite rusty, to be honest.
I love it. Okay, I do want to ask you this question before we kind of wrap up. Niclas, is there something that you believe that you think very few other people would agree with you on? Like you have kind of a singular stance on something?
Well, maybe what we touched before, that I strongly believe that music is a numbers game.
Yeah.
I know that I said, you know, a lot of people will hate me for saying it, but I strongly believe that.
Yeah.
You know, there are different approaches. If you want to create one track every 2 years and you want to nerd down on every single detail, that's fine. And, you know, I appreciate that.
Right.
But, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But if you want to make a living from music and if you want to have a professional approach, then it is a numbers game. So many things that I've experienced over the past years that they're just proving my point.
Yeah.
Especially in this space.
Yeah.
It is a numbers game. That's my core belief. It might not be the most creative thing to say, but it's what I believe.
It's really important, and it drives a lot of the creative decisions that you make in a healthy way, in a measured and healthy way. And I think for anyone who is asking you for advice and who sees everything you've done and is looking to maybe follow in those footsteps a little bit, that is such a great, I don't want to say a place to start because I think it grows with you always, but it is definitely one of those first conversations to have with yourself about what that numbers game looks like. And that's I love your approach.
And also, if you just put aside the chances of one track flying, if you're new to this, just understanding your audience. If you're building an audience and you're putting out a lot of tracks, you will also understand which tracks are being welcomed well from your audience, which ones will resonate with them, which allows you maybe to tailor stuff a little bit more for your fans.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you need to make music that you enjoy and that you're really passionate about and that you like. But that is quite a big range. There's nothing wrong in adjusting tracks or taking them in a certain direction because you know that this will appeal to an audience.
Yes.
I don't think there's something wrong with that.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great place to end it right there. Niclas, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your heart, man. Thanks for sharing every bit of it.
Pleasure.
Man, you are an encouragement and an inspiration to certainly to me, but to a lot of people who are listening in on this. Love what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Can't wait to dig into the Emotions EP as it comes out. And a little bird told me that you're even doing a remix for some Dear Gravity guy or something later on in the year. That's a thing. I'm excited about that one. That's going to be great.
Yeah, so am I. It's beautiful stuff.
Seriously, man. It is an honor to be in this together with you. Thank you for being on the All Ambient podcast. Let's make sure that this isn't the last time it happens, but thank you for this time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Man. What a pleasure. Thank you again for listening to the All Ambient podcast. Music throughout today's episode was from the catalog of Niclas Lundqvist, and you can find all of this music along with a bunch of other incredible songs, bundles, and other resources from an amazing group of composers and producers at all-ambient.com. And be sure to use the promo code podcast25. That's podcast25, and you'll get 25% off of any product at all-ambient.com. It's a great opportunity to save even more on an incredible resource for your next film, video, or project. Don't wait for another second. Head over to allambient.com and use promo code podcast25. Again, that's podcast25 to get 25% off of your next purchase. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so you can catch every conversation we have with all these incredible people who share the same passion. I'm looking forward to the next time. I hope that you are too. Can't wait to see you then. And until then, have an incredible day. Here's hoping that this music and the heart behind it makes your day and life that much better. See you next time.